Hi, Mom. I'm gonna put you on mute. Gonna help you out a little bit.
Yeah, are you needing the cart? Or you can leave the cart? Okay, yeah, you could just put it back by that wooden table or whatever. Yeah, thank you.
And video. There you go. Okay. It does not look like you're sharing a screen, but yeah, you're gonna need to drag it to this screen. There. That's good. Okay. And then I would ask, can everybody see it?
We can see.
You can see it?
We did see the slides. Now we see the Google Sheets.
Oh, no.
There we go.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, we're gonna get started. Is that okay? If I do a little intro? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Zoom people, for coming. This is quite the group. So this is Miles's thesis defense. This is the final oral defense of what he has been working on for the last 3 years. So this is quite the culmination. So first, thank you, committee members, for being here. Thank you, public, family, friends, etc. How this is going to work is Miles is going to give his presentation. Then we will open it up to questions from the audience or the public. Folks on Zoom, you're more than welcome to either raise a hand or write a question in the chat. So Miles can answer those. And so we'll give everybody an opportunity for that. Then we are going to kick the public out, and the committee will be asking some more questions with Miles. Then we're going to kick him out, and then we will deliberate, and then we'll bring you back in for the final whatever.
Cool. Final whatever.
Okay, just a procedural question.
Yes.
We don't kick everybody out first for a question and then have them come back in?
I'm sorry, who?
Maybe not? Okay, so
I was just gonna public questions first.
that wasn't my question.
Okay,
When we've done this for other departments, often there is a moment before this whole thing gets started where the committee talks and asks each other a question.
I have not experienced that
Okay.
until after the question.
Right, there's also that one.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
not experienced it before question.
Okay.
In any of the ones I saw.
Okay.
Would you like to request that though?
I don't think we need to today. I just was checking for a procedural question.
Got it. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay. All right, take it away.
All right. Well, Welcome, esteemed committee members and guests and online guests. I am Miles Rhodes, and I am honored to present my thesis for your consideration. This work, my thesis on the ethical and equitable creation of closed missing persons cases database utilizing intersectional theories. This work focuses on creating a culturally informed reference database for closed missing persons cases, specifically adult cases in Idaho, with a broader goal of supporting Indigenous communities. I am a Two-Spirit Indigenous researcher. I am a United States Air Force veteran. I have over 20 years experience in emergency medical services and search and rescue and canine search and rescue. I approach this project through the lens of the MMIP crisis, but the core of this research is the design and development of the reference database itself, a tool built to reflect the complexities of Indigenous identities and to address the gaps in existing systems. Before we begin, it is important to recognize the Shoshone-Bannock peoples, the original caretakers of this land. The Fort Hall Reservation, which once encompassed this very ground, remains their ancestral home. We acknowledge the Shoshone-Bannock tribes, their past and present elders, and their future generations. Our commitment is not just to acknowledge this land, but to engage in meaningful collaboration, ensuring that research like this contributes to accurate histories, strengthens partnerships, and fosters solutions that serve Indigenous communities with respect and integrity. Today's presentation will cover the key elements of this research project, including the focus and objectives of the study, the Idaho-specific background and contextual data, the research methods employed, the findings and the analysis, the implications of the findings, and future directions. To build a database that truly reflects the realities of Indigenous peoples and MMIP cases, I use these theoretical frameworks to shape how data is categorized, represented, and ethically governed, not just to understand MMIP, but to design a system that does not perpetuate erasure and bias. Intersectionality is all about understanding how different forms of oppression, race, gender, class, overlap to create unique vulnerabilities. When we look at the MMIP crisis through this lens, we see why Indigenous women and Two-Spirit individuals and those in economically marginalized communities face a heightened risk of violence and disappearance. This framework allows us to build a database that captures these nuances, recognizing identity markers and systemic barriers that influence case outcomes. Lifestyle exposure theory explains that a person's routine activities and environment impact their risk of victimization. Many AIAN communities experience higher exposure to risk due to historical trauma, economic instability, and systemic neglect. By applying this theory, we can pinpoint key vulnerability indicators like housing instability, employment status, and past victimization, so that our database provides a clearer picture of the factors at play in each case. One of the most striking issues in the MMIP crisis is the disparity in media coverage. While when a white woman goes missing, national news outlets often amplify the case, while missing Indigenous women and other women of color receive little to no attention. This phenomenon, known as missing white woman syndrome, affects everything from public awareness to law enforcement response. By structuring our database in a way that makes Indigenous cases more visible, we help ensure these cases are documented and advocated for properly. Feminist theory frames MMIP as a direct consequence of gender-based violence and systemic discrimination against Indigenous women. Violence against AIAN women and girls has deep historical roots, but it persists because of structural inequalities. By incorporating feminist perspectives, our database doesn't just acknowledge patterns of victimizations. It highlights the urgent need for policy changes to prioritize Indigenous safety and justice. Queer theory challenges the gender binary and pushes for a more inclusive representation in research and policy. Two-Spirit and gender diverse individuals are disproportionately affected by violence and often misclassified in national missing persons databases. Our approach ensures that these identities are correctly recorded, reducing misclassification and strengthening search efforts. Each of these theories plays a vital role in shaping this database as a whole. They don't exist in isolation. They work together to build a more complete and representative tool. By grounding the database in these frameworks, we go beyond traditional law enforcement approaches and create a system that truly reflects the lived experiences of missing persons. This isn't just about collecting data. It's about making real change in how these cases are understood, investigated, and ultimately solved. So some of the key findings from this literature review. One thing that stood out was the lack of comprehensive data was one of the biggest obstacles that this database directly addresses. The current gaps from underreporting to cultural misclassification informed the design features of this database, ensuring these issues are directly tackled. Because this database is designed to go beyond static data, its structure supports future integration of geospatial technologies to improve search accuracy and speed, especially for cases along the I-15 corridor where MMIP numbers are high. One of the biggest barriers to addressing MMIP cases is the lack of a centralized, accurate, and culturally relevant database. Existing national systems like NamUs, NCMEC, and NCIC rely on voluntary data, which means many Indigenous cases are either missing, incomplete, or misclassified. Even though in 2022, when NCIC onboarded 2 Native liaisons for all of Indian country and added fields like Indigenous affiliation and whether or not an incident occurred on or off reservation, for just further murking the jurisdictional waters with that. These changes do not fully resolve systemic issues, nor do they give tribal communities control over their own data. In response, this research developed an Indigenous-led, culturally informed database framework that captures vital cultural identity and identity markers overlooked by current systems, such as, again, tribal affiliation, socioeconomic factors, gender diversity, all while supporting both MMIP advocates and law enforcement. A key focus in this design is ensuring that gender diverse individuals are accurately represented, addressing long-standing gaps in gender classification. This database is intended to serve as a tool for Indigenous communities to manage their data, to identify patterns, and to drive advocacy and justice. Further collaboration is planned with the Shoshone-Bannock tribes pending full IRB and tribal council approval to ensure ethical, transparent partnership that upholds Indigenous data sovereignty. This project represents the first culturally relevant reference database of its kind, specifically for adult MMIP cases, centering Indigenous voices, needs, and identities. Existing databases fail to reflect Indigenous realities, which contributes to underreporting and erasure. The current focus on this research is on the I-15 corridor, where the database framework has been designed to capture the unique cultural and identity markers relevant to Indigenous and surrounding communities. Again, future collaboration is intended with the Shoshone-Bannock tribes to ensure that the database reflects tribal priorities and knowledge. Additionally, future development may integrate geospatial methods such as satellite imagery, spatial analysis, all to improve search accuracy and speed, reducing delays common in traditional search efforts. Most critically, Indigenous data sovereignty is a guiding principle of this work. While this thesis focuses on the design and framework, Future data collection will require ethical protocols, tribal input, and community control to ensure information is never used without consent and remains a resource for those it represents. This research is committed to the following principles: securing IRB and tribal council approval, ensuring data privacy and security, upholding that Indigenous data sovereignty, voluntary participation. This work also acknowledges current limitations, incomplete and inconsistent reporting, agency reluctancy to share data, and the critical importance of building and sustaining tribal partnerships over time. While this represents a step towards ethical community-centered solutions, future phases will need to continue this effort as an evolving process. For this data to be effective, it must be culturally accurate, usable by law enforcement and advocates, and sustainable. Our analysis of current databases highlights critical gaps. Federal systems suffer from voluntary participation and underreporting. State and local databases are inconsistent in tracking Indigenous and non-Indigenous cases. Tribal databases, where they exist, are often informal or advocacy driven, like somebody's private Facebook page, not intended for official integration, or not intended for integration into official systems. To address this, we are building a standardized data sharing protocol that ensures ethical case inclusion across jurisdictions, balancing law enforcement need with tribal control over their own sensitive data. The initial pilot includes 383 closed adult cases along I-15, and future phases, again, are going to incorporate those geospatial tools and possibly predictive AI to improve the search efforts. We are designing this system with Indigenous-led governance in mind, ensuring that tribal approval will guide any direct data collection beyond public record. Ultimately, this work seeks to create a trusted, practical tool that serves both the Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities and those working to bring missing persons home. So this research addresses those gaps by analyzing data points and identifying critical omissions like, again, gender identity, traditional names, which often result in erasure or misclassification in current federal systems. To correct this, I've established a set of standardized core data points aligned with DOJ recommended fields, including geospatial and forensic search factors like point last seen, last known point, and probability of detection, and capturing sociocultural variables such as like cultural markers, economic vulnerability, and jurisdictional challenges. This database restores gender inclusive data categories, addressing the recent changes in NamUs that removed non-binary and unknown options, which has harmed representation of gender diverse individuals. To ensure that the database can support reliable predictive models and AI search tools, this research focuses on closed, solved missing persons cases from 2010 to 2023. Using resolved cases allows us to analyze complete data sets with known outcomes, reducing biases from incomplete or open investigations. These cases provide patterns in geospatial, demographic, and investigative data that are essential for developing the AI-driven search algorithm to improve future search and recovery efforts. Again, this is a future goal. This is going to be somebody else's project. To maintain statistical reliability, we have a minimum threshold of 10 cases per category, which was set to avoid patterns based on outliers and to ensure meaningful, generalizable findings. Out of the 842 cases that I reviewed, Again, only 383 closed cases met that criteria. Focusing on adult cases, a group severely underrepresented in national data systems. A key focus of this database. We have all kinds of data and research on children and vulnerable adults, but that is only because it is federally mandated. It is law that we find those missing individuals. I'm reminded of a case that I reviewed. The officer initiated a traffic stop, came back to the driver with their information and says, "Did you know that you've been listed as a missing person for the last 20 years? The driver goes, "I'm not missing, I'm right here." Turns out they had a falling out with their family 20 years ago and went no contact and cut off all ties. As adults, we are all free to go missing if we so choose. So there's really no way to study the missing. There's also no internationally agreed upon definition of missing. You know, in what context are you missing? Are you a runaway, a takeaway, a giveaway, a driftaway, a throwaway? We don't know. And this database has been quite overwhelming because we don't know. We don't know what data points right now are the best ones to go off of. So as you'll see later, I collected them all, or as much as I possibly could think of. The database is designed for ongoing refinement and expansion. As more historical or future cases become available, additional records will be evaluated for inclusion, provided they meet established thresholds to maintain data integrity. Importantly, case thresholds and data points will be reassessed over time, incorporating new cultural, forensic, and investigative insights to ensure that predictive models remain accurate and culturally responsive. Again, a future project. This iterative process ensures that the database grows in a way that strengthens its usefulness for both MMIP advocates and search professionals without compromising on ethical standards or methodological rigor. All right. And now I'm going to transition here. Can everybody see the spreadsheet now? Can I get a thumbs up from a couple of folks?
Teddy says yes.
All right, I got a yes. Great, we'll move on. So to create a database that truly reflects the realities of missing Indigenous persons, we need to go beyond basic physical descriptions. A comprehensive approach considers the social, cultural, and environmental factors that shape each case. This database is structured around 5 key categories, each designed to enhance search efforts and case resolution. Biological profile, standard physical descriptors used for identification. Cultural characteristics, traditions, kinship structures, and beliefs that can influence search efforts. Geospatial, tracking location patterns to identify movement trends and potential search areas. Health and medical factors, conditions that may affect mobility, memory, or risk factors for disappearance. And finally, economic status, high-risk factors that may make someone more vulnerable. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is these are categories that will continue to grow as individuals self-identify or provide nuanced information. The data collected for this study provides critical insights into the patterns, challenges, and disparities surrounding missing Indigenous persons in Idaho. Through a combination of case data, geospatial analysis, and comparative statistics, several key themes have emerged, including demographic patterns of missing persons, geospatial concentrations of cases, systemic reporting issues, discrepancies in case outcomes between Indigenous and non-Indigenous persons. Each of these findings helps illustrate the broader systemic factors affecting MMIP cases and informs the next steps for advocacy, policy, and law enforcement intervention. The data collected from this research includes 383 documented missing persons cases from 2010 to 2023. Looking at the gender distribution, we see that males make up 56% or 214 cases, females 166 cases or 43%, unidentified 2. At first glance, the male to female ratio seems fairly balanced, especially compared to Pocatello's census data, which reflects an even 50-50 split. However, the numbers tell a more complicated story. Uh-oh, what did I just do? While males make up a slightly higher percentage of documented cases, females, especially Indigenous women, face significantly greater risk when considering additional vulnerability factors. Nationally, Indigenous women and girls disappear at a rate up to 10 times higher than the general population. The 43% female representation may actually be a more severe disproportion within Indigenous communities, one that isn't fully captured in existing law enforcement records. The 1% of unidentified cases also points to critical gaps in case documentation, highlighting the need for better demographic tracking. So building on what I just shared about the gender disparities, let's now take a look at how age and sex intersect. When we talk about missing persons cases, this really helps us see which age groups are most vulnerable and how those risks are different from men and women. First, young adults ages 18 to 25 are the most at-risk group here in Pocatello. They make up 95 cases total. That's about 25% of all the cases. Young adults only make up about 15% of Pocatello's population. So they are definitely overrepresented here. And when we look at gender, it's almost an even split between 49 men and 46 women. So this age group is vulnerable across the board. Next, we see a gradual decline as we move into the Middle Ages, and I kind of throw up a little bit because I hit 40 and I'm there and I'm feeling it. But it's good to know that I'm less likely to go missing now. Ages 26 to 35, there are 80 cases. 36 to 45 drops to 60 cases. Age 46 to 55, we see 48 cases. So fewer cases as people get older, but women continue to be represented throughout, meaning the risk doesn't just disappear as people age. Then we look at older adults, those 56 plus. We see a sharp decline, but also some surprises. For those between 66 and 75, there are only 13 cases, most of them consisting of men. But when we look at 76 and older, suddenly the number jumps back up to 36 cases. So that's a pretty significant increase. And it suggests age-related factors like cognitive decline or other vulnerabilities may be playing a role for people in the oldest age group. We look at population affinity along the I-15 corridor here in Idaho. A couple of important patterns stand out. First, one of the clearest findings is among European descended women. In the 26 to 35 age group, women are missing twice the rate of men, 78 women compared to 38 men. So in this specific region, young women in that group are showing up as a highly vulnerable population. Second, Indigenous representation shows up in a way that raises some important questions. And for those attending on Zoom, kind of point my mouse towards the two categories that I want to identify, and then point out the lack of information. Although Indigenous people make up only 1.5% of Pocatello's population, they represent a much higher percentage of missing persons cases. Indigenous women are especially at risk, particularly in the 26 to 35 and 46 to 55 age groups. And when we compare these numbers to broader trends, the disparity becomes even clearer. Nationally, missing persons are reported at 10.5 per 100,000. But here in Idaho, for Indigenous people, that rate is 19 per 100,000, almost double the national rate of missing persons. This isn't just a local issue. It reflects the broader MMIP crisis across the country. But we also know that underreporting and misclassification likely mean the real numbers are even higher. And that's why this database is critical, to fill those gaps and to ensure Indigenous cases are properly documented and visible. When we map missing persons cases in Pocatello, clear patterns emerge. Some areas have much higher rates than others. Cases aren't spread evenly. They cluster in certain census tracts or neighborhoods, but we are using census tracts so that way we can get a more accurate number, because census tracts are by 1,000, I believe. Yes.
Sounds about right.
Census tract 1601, for those not familiar with Pokey, that's kind of the southwest side of the town. Census tract 1601 has the highest concentration with 27 cases. Tracks 1602 and 1400 follow closely with about 20. By focusing on tracks with the 10 or more, remember that threshold. By focusing on facts or tracks with 10 or more cases, we can identify areas that need attention without getting distracted by isolated incidences. Beyond raw numbers, per capita rates show deeper risk. Citywide, there are 4.19 cases per 1,000 residents, but in tract 1601, the rate jumps to 7 per 100,000, almost double the city's average. Many of these high-risk areas are right along the I-15 and major highways. That suggests transit routes may play a role, which lines up with national patterns linking highways to higher disappearance rates. Income is also a major factor. Tract 1601, the highest risk area, has one of the lowest median incomes between 20 to 42,000. 70% of the cases overall come from households making 25 to 50K a year, with only 7% of those households earning over 75,000. These patterns, location, income, proximity to highways, are built into how the database will flag high-risk areas, so it can better guide search efforts and prevention strategies. Looking at these cases through an economic lens reveals some clear patterns about how economic levels influence missing persons risks. 70% of the cases, that's 156 total, come from households earning that 25 to 50K a year. Low-income households earning under 25K account for 10% of the cases. And again, the 7% earning over 75K, and I believe it's less than 1% or less than 2% for those earning over 100,000. Suggesting that those who come from higher income levels may have reduced risk. When we map the cases to census tracts, the link between income and risk become clear. Census tract 1601 again, with that median income of 20 to 42,000 has the highest number of cases, about 26 in total, or 27 rather. Census tract 1602 with slightly higher income comes in second place with about 21 cases. Even middle income tracts like 14, 9, 15, and 7 report 17 to 20 cases each, showing that economic vulnerability operates on a spectrum, not at just the lowest end. As income goes up, the number of cases go down. As part of this research is looking at, a big part of this research is looking at where and when missing persons cases are resolved. So we can understand patterns that affect search and recovery. 82% of the cases were resolved somewhere other than home. Only 18% of the cases, or 18%, or 62 of the cases were found at their residence, which challenges the assumption that people just come home on their own. Even in cases resolved within 24 hours, 224 people were found away from home, showing that mobility is a factor even early on. 43 cases lasted between 2 to 7 days. And the longer a case stays open, the more likely the person is found far from home. Indigenous cases are often cross jurisdictional boundaries, making searches even harder. 16 of those cases stayed open for more than a month, and some went over 2 years. There's a noticeable gap in recoveries between 3 to 6 months, suggesting that if a case isn't solved early, relocation is often involved. So when we look at missing persons cases over time, we can see clear patterns that help identify where and when to focus resources. So going from 2010, we see a winter trend happening all the way to 2023. That trend went from winter to summer. So now that we know who is most vulnerable, where are they most vulnerable, and when, this is what we can do to inform policy and to assist law enforcement. So now that we can see patterns beyond missing persons cases, the next step is action. This isn't just about data, it's about solutions. Smarter search strategies, because 82% of the people are found away from home. We need search tools that focus on where they are likely to be, not just where they live or where they've gone missing from, but where are they likely to be? The database will use AI and geospatial mapping, again, future project for somebody else. This is a culturally accurate database. And training law enforcement. It's not enough to just have the data, but officers also need to learn how to use the database. And using the database, we're able to target resources to better mitigate risk. A first of its kind database, combining AI, geospatial data, and cultural identity for smarter, faster searches. This database will eventually learn to adapt as more cases are added. It is ethically sourced and inclusive data built on 383 closed adult cases along Idaho's I-15 corridor. This database corrects historic underreporting of Indigenous cases. The tools are here, but to make the difference, we need action. We need collaboration. We need funding and training. We need our Indigenous partnerships. We need formal agreements. Without these commitments, MMIP cases will continue to be underreported, misclassified, and ignored. This isn't just about research. This is about real change. Right now, MMIP cases are still being lost in flawed systems. This database can change that, but only if it's fully supported. Every missing Indigenous person deserves to be seen, heard, and found. This database is a step forward, but we need collective action so these cases aren't forgotten. Let's make sure they don't disappear in silence. So I would like to thank the Office for Research, the internal seed grant. I would like to thank my advisor, Dr. Kirsten Mink, for going on this journey together for the last 3 years. I would like to thank my committee members. You both have just been a wealth of knowledge, and I can't thank you enough for your help and your support. I would like to thank my partner who agreed to come out to Idaho with me and, help me through this, and be there to support me. I want to thank the Federated Tribes of Grant Rancheria. Without my tribe, my higher education would not be possible. And yeah, I will open up the floor to questions. Give me a moment.
First, good job. I think it's that deserves more. Yeah, if anybody would like to drop a question in the chat, and if you're on mute, and then if not, open it up to the floor. Who's here in person, please?
So everybody online should be able to unmute themselves if they wish.
I have a question. In your bar graph, you're looking at age, with each section. I've noticed that most age ranges were 10 years, except for your last age range, the 76 plus with the spike.
Mhm.
Is that spike influenced at all because it is potentially a larger age range than the rest, or do the ages beyond that 10-year gap, do they just not influence it?
I think it's just because it's capturing such a large swath of individuals. That's why you see that gap. I think maybe if we could break it down to like 5-year increments, we might see a different trend. But I just tried to think of a logical way to keep the graphic clean. So I decided the 10-year gap.
Any questions?
Nothing in the chat.
Awesome.
Well, if there's nothing else, Kirsten, do you wanna?
I'm sorry, I have a
Yeah.
question.
So all the databases in Idaho, are you?
Hi, sorry, I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, Julia.
Okay. I'm just wondering how you implemented the Indigenous data sovereignty principles within your methodology.
That's a great question, and that is one that is I kind of wanted, my thought process behind that is having the tribes lead the way, having the tribes provide what data they wish to provide. And I want the tribes to have full control over their own data. That's been my driving principle throughout this project. And it's going to continue further conversation and talk with the tribes at a later date. Unfortunately, we just didn't have the time to start conversations. But that is a future goal. And I wanted to design this so that it's in mind and ready to go.
Looks like John has one, but also Ontario.
Ontario.
Oh, sorry. So all the database and everything is in Idaho. Are you gonna focus in the state of California too? Because California is one of the highest areas of MMIP.
So one of the hopes of this project is that it can be designed and built so that it is dropped into any geographical location and be able to adapt to any population affinity. So it potentially, yes, it could be used elsewhere, but right now, our focus is the I-15 corridor. We'll see if this project goes beyond the pilot stage. Then yes, it potentially could be dragged and dropped into another location to look at another population affinity. John, you had a question?
Yes, as you and I both know, as search professionals, how did you deal with possible missing data that's in these data sets due to lack of proper investigation by the authorities that are initially looking for this missing person or post data? How did you filter that aspect?
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, truepeoplesearch.com. It's amazing what you can find that is publicly available on individuals. So I was able to track next of kin. I was able to track residency. Anything and everything on these individuals so I could fill in the gaps.
Thank you.
Good question. Don't see any other hands.
I have one question.
Okay.
This is Kimberly Kelly from California and Colorado. Early in your presentation, you did a run through of runaway, throwaway, takeaway, giveaway, and then I missed the last one, which I wrote a note as fade away, but I didn't know what the last thing you said was.
I always have to count on my fingers on this one. Runaway, takeaway, giveaway, drift away, throwaway.
Okay, so I had fade away, but drift away, I think, is the exact same thing. So thank you very much. This was very informative. And as someone who worked on a missing Alzheimer's Indigenous persons project, this has particularly relevant meaning for me. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. There you go.
So what made you decide of this this heavy topic? Have you ever had anybody in your family gone missing, like in your reservation or in your community?
So not that I know of in my reservation or in my communities. I've never had family go missing. It's just for me, this is a deeply personal thing because I've been a search and rescue professional for so many years. And growing up, I've always known Manifest Destiny as the invasion from the East. So I've grown up knowing of these systemic disparities. I've grown up knowing of these historical traumas. So for me, as an Indigenous researcher, as a search and rescue professional, this is an opportunity for me to give back to my communities in order to help illuminate those hidden figures. This kind of turned into my life's work, or probably soon will be.
Yeah. All right, last call maybe for anybody online or anybody here? Good. Give it a second. Okay, great. Well, thank you all for coming. We're gonna kick you out now. But we really appreciate it. And I'm sure Miles will send his thanks. All right, sounds good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Miles. Thanks, guys. Thank you.